this. Okay. All right. Hello.
Hello, we're back.
We're technically supposed to be here for finals, but we're gonna go through a couple quick things again. First off, thank you to everybody who watched today because it is Father's Day and I really appreciate that. Which reminds me, I have to go call my dad after this.
Oh yeah.
So he's working right now, so it's totally fine. But here's a couple of things to let you guys know. Like I've been saying, technically the last CP event of the season. That doesn't mean that we're done with tournaments here, because July 16th and July 30th. If you wanted some practice for Regulation D, which is going to be a chaotic, wild mess, but you wanted some practice, we are going to have tournaments here at Psycho Total Play for those tournaments. So get your Ursulinas ready. Get your Urshifus. Urshifu. Get your Urshifus ready. Landorus, Return of the King, I guess. We're really just going for it there. But anything and everything that is legal for Regulation D, bring that stuff to those tournaments. Mark your calendars, July 16th, July 30th. It'll be fun. It'll be chaotic.
And if you want practice before Worlds.
Yeah, definitely.
If you're maybe Worlds, you want practice?
I will not be here for the July 30th one. I will be already on my way. So I'll be watching that from wherever I am. Maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But before we get into finals, just want to say a couple quick thank yous specifically to POW Gaming for as always having great staff for us to work with for stream and having their like logo here in the corner and like the great green screen back here. They do run Super Smash Brothers tournaments on Wednesdays and Saturdays. You can find all that information for them on their POW Gaming website. They do have links to all of their events and registrations. That's also where you can find the registration for all of our events. So if you want to show off your Super Smash Bros. Skills, go ahead and do so by showing up to these events. They're really a great time. They also have community nights on Friday nights. I'm really bad at stuff like that. I'm the down B Pikachu person.
Oh yeah?
I'm so bad.
I also play Pikachu.
Okay, I'm like a degenerate Pikachu, but it's fine. Speaking of Pikachus, it's back to Pokemon. How's that for a transition, everyone? We are gonna have one of your first finalists, Everett, Fillloon, who you did just see earlier, and Aaron Brok, who you've seen. I think this is his third time now. So no Alberto gatekeep him from finals like yesterday is able to safely make it in here. So you will have Everett's team on your screen.
Also, top cut from San Diego back in the day.
Yeah. So
not back in the day. It was earlier this year. But
look, January was a very long time ago. Time is a construct and makes no sense. So we are San Diego Top Cut versus the San Diego Native. We are going to have like you guys saw that Murkrow, Great Tusk, Golden Go, Gothitelle, Iron Hands, Glamora versus Aaron's team of that Chiyu, Gyarados, Amoonguss, Iron Hands, Fluttermane, and Tinglu. So if Aaron's team seems familiar, it's because it should be if you've been laddering at all.
Oh yeah, this is the team that's just been running around these last few regionals, and I mean it's the team to beat going into NAIC. So I mean, let's see if Everett here has the answer.
Yeah, well, you said you like team build and like practice sometimes with Everett. Like, have you guys practiced your New Balance matchup?
I mean, he does practice it. He does practice it actually.
Okay, yeah. I was like, that wasn't an immediate yes, so now I'm kind of worried for him, right?
I mean, not necessarily with me, right? But I mean, with everybody else, I always see them in call, and they're always practicing. They always practice the really common matchups. So he definitely has practicing.
Yeah, I was going to say, if I ever saw you with a New Balance team, I'd be like, are you okay? But we are going to have that Amoonguss and that Gyarados as the lead of choice versus Murkrow and that Great Tusk. So Murkrow finally making another appearance here. Gyarados says, hey, I'm going to intimidate you, both of you. Great Tusk is going to worry about that a little bit more. Murkrow is a tiny bird that doesn't really care about it. I mean, sure, it has Brave Bird access, but maybe that intimidate might work out because of the Amoonguss.
Yeah, and I mean, this Great Tusk does not have Rock Slide, so it can't really hit this Gyarados super effectively either. So I mean, might need to switch out, or maybe it just goes for the headlong rush into the Amoonguss to get some damage. But it looks like he is thinking about switching out.
Yeah, it's actually really funny because like now I actually just realized Everett locks me out of my favorite saying with his flinch. There's a way with that Great Tusk, but Great Tusk saying, all right, I'm gonna head out here. I'm gonna switch out for a partner. It's gonna be that Gothitelle actually, so gonna bring in the Shadow tag. So Aaron has at least this turn to switch things out if he wants, but actually double switching from Everett, not really appreciating his lead, not really liking those intimidates, and is actually gonna bring in Iron Hands onto the field. So Iron Hands doesn't have to worry about that intimidate from that Gyarados, but Gyarados going for the taunt instead, so shutting down any sort of Swords Dance here that like, could happen as Amoonguss actually goes for a Spore. So gonna catch that Gothitelle in on the switch and is gonna say, all right, Gothitelle, you wanted to show up here? You're gonna be put to sleep now.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good play from Aaron there, right? I mean, you could have he could have actually targeted the Iron Hands, and I think that's what Everett was actually hoping for there, right? Because he did switch in the Iron Hands into that slot, which has safety goggles on it. So I mean, Aaron kind of calling that turn correctly, and you know, Gothitelle puts to sleep, but you know, is still keeping him in there. He can shadow tag while it's asleep still.
Yeah, the game attack never ends even while you're asleep, but this Gyarados is going to be going for that Terastallized Fairy. So the Fairy typing again really popular, thanks to Brian Yums, but Waterfall going into that Gothitelle, even, you know, it's not going to wake up this turn, but Pollen Puff from that Amoonguss going into that Gothitelle, they're doing their best to make sure that this Gothitelle is out before it even wakes up. Its Gyarados still takes a lot of damage from that Wild Charge despite losing that typing there. Is going to be forced to eat its berry down on this turn.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the Citrus Berry, that would have been a clean 2-hit KO. So I mean, the Iron Hand's still without Swords Dance, so still doing a good amount of damage here, right? And it's all about if Gothitelle could stay on this field for the next turn. You know, Pollen Puff plus Waterfall might actually KO it. So let's see if we can get out of this trap anytime soon.
Yeah, Iron Hand's really saying, I don't need to take you out to dance just to be able to take you out in general. And so I think this Gyarados and this Amoonguss just really putting in a lot of pressure, right? We saw Everett being forced to go for that double switch, and this Gothitelle just kind of being really just a sacrificial Pokemon at this point because there's not really much it can do. If you switch it out, whatever is coming into its place is going to be in a lot of trouble, and you're not really putting in as much pressure onto Aaron's Pokemon as you could be because of it. Like, sure, you were able to get that Wild Charge down into that Gyarados, but now Aaron is still sort of in a prime position to just start taking knockouts, start getting a lot of like good chip damage onto stuff, and is really just sort of putting the pressure on Everett.
Oh, and he switches out his Iron Hands, which is very interesting, right? I believe he selected Murkrow, and yeah. Oh.
Yeah, so Murkrow coming back into play said, all right, well, I left long enough. I'm going to come back in. Waterfall from that Gyarados. Not enough to pick up the knockout here, but Pollen Puff from the Amoonguss actually going into the Gyarados in the spot. So it's like that Iron Hands damage doesn't even exist at this point. Gothitelle able to wake up, might get a flinch here. Oof! Yeah, that Waterfall flinch really hurting right now because that prime wake up time would have been great for it to do that Trick Room setup that we had seen coming, but unfortunately it was unable to do so because of the fact that it flinched from that Waterfall.
Oh yeah, no, and that's what happens, right? I mean, we still have that saying, you know, if there's a flinch, there's a way. So yeah, so preventing that Trick Room there. But you know, Murkrow's down on the field right now, so I mean, he could be actually setting up for that, you know, a faster option, like, you know, going to Tailwind or whatnot.
Yeah, and I think this Murkrow is like in a really interesting spot, right? Both Murkrow and Gothitelle aren't exactly Pokemon that you look at as damage dealers, but if you can get them in a spot where they can set up safely for Everett, there is still a way where he could try to win this with both the Iron Hands and the Great Tusk that he has in the back. The problem is that Aaron isn't being forced to, like, into any sort of pressuring situation.
And actually, a very interesting thing is Murkrow has Quash, so it technically does have some use within Trick Room, right? Because it just goes first anyway. So I mean, even if he sets up this Trick Room here, it could turn out well.
Yeah, it was taunted this turn though by the Gyarados, so gonna have to just be locked into Brave Bird forever. As both the Murkrow and the Gothitelle said, "Hey, Amoonguss, we don't like what you're doing. We are going to knock you out here." A Brave Bird plus a Psychic. From the a follow-up Psychic from the Gothitelle is going to be enough to knock out the Amoonguss. Gothitelle slowly getting back some of the HP, so it's still able to hang on by a thread as that Murkrow, you know, did have to take some damage from the recoil from Brave Bird, but at least they were able to get rid of the Amoonguss, but it did pave the way for Fluttermane.
Yeah, so Fluttermane trying to best janitor at the school here. You know, let me clean up this match. But I mean, it can definitely putting on a lot of pressure right now. But Murkrow does still have that priority Tailwind that could set up for the people.
It got taunted.
Oh right.
So yeah, all I can really do is be a brave little bird and go for those attacks, unfortunately. And like honestly, you can see Everett just in a really tough position here because these aren't Pokemon that you really want to be attacking with, but neither of the Pokemon that you have in the back really feel safe to switch in.
And you see, actually, he might be going for that. Switch it into Iron Hands here, right? I mean, it does go for the Charm here. It might be okay, but or he might go for Trick Room. It all depends if they target into the slot.
Yeah, so Murkrow's going to be forced to switch out because I don't think Everett really feels that the Brave Bird is worth any of the recoil damage. Iron Head comes into play here, but Fluttermane is like, hey, I see that, and I'm going to Moonblast into it. So anything, like any Moonblast actually into that spot would have been just fantastic here. As Gyarados is going to follow up with a Waterfall into the Gothitelle, so no Trick Room potential at all, unfortunately, here. Again, that flinch from that Waterfall earlier just really swinging the game even more in Aaron's favor, right?
Yeah.
And so the Iron Hand comes in, but it takes a lot of damage for its troubles.
Yeah, so I mean, there's still a little bit of a silver lining for Everett here, right? He does have the fake out pressure, and I believe he did not use his Terrestrialize yet. So I mean, he could, depending on what the Terrestrialize.
There we go. Yeah, he could go for that.
Yeah, so he's not weak to Moonblast anymore with this. He will be weak to Waterfall, but you know, let's see if he could take the double up here. It really depends.
Yeah, that's just, you're in between a rock and a hard place at this point, and part of that is going to be the Earthquake. It's just, everything kind of in that moment with that flinch, just it feels like it fell apart for Everett, right? Like, you know that Trick Room setup would have been just a perfect time to really just try and take back that game from Aaron. And now that you're kind of forced to just find other avenues of going up against these Pokemon, like, sure, you got rid of the Amoonguss, but now that Fluttermane is still just a pain in your butt right now. You do have the Terrestrialization with the ground type here for this Great Tusk, so yeah, you don't have to worry about the Moonblast, but like you said, the Waterfall really being one of like the own attacks. But hey, you stop that with a fake out on this turn, so dazzlingly though from that Fluttermane. Gonna pick up the knockout on the Iron Hands. The Iron Hands doesn't have to take any friendly fire from Earthquake here, and you are just gonna have to, like, you know, that Earthquake is gonna connect to both. You don't have to worry about the Waterfall here.
And actually, believe it or not, he does still have the Murkrow in the back, so he can get the speed advantage here, actually. So, I mean, this could be a pretty good cleanup based on what Aaron might have in the back.
Yeah, so Gyarados flinches on this turn, and wow, what's happening here is that she was going to be the last Pokemon in the back. Murkrow says, hey, I don't have that taunt anymore. I have access to something like Tailwind again. And so we could really put this game back in Everett's favor. You do have access to that Tailwind. You can make your Pokemon faster, and you can still go for super effective Earthquakes.
Yeah, and this Chi-Yu does not have a Sash, so it might not actually be able to get an attack off, especially with this Terra Ground Earthquake. I mean, it's probably going to outspeed, and, you know, it might actually clean up the game here.
Yeah, Murkrow says, hey, Tailwind is here. Earthquake from the Great Tusk here. Not going to touch the Murkrow, but is going to be able to go after both of those Pokemon. And actually, surprisingly, Everett is able to pick up this game and win match number 1 in this finals. I thought, honestly, I'm not going to lie, I thought that turn with the flinch in that Gothitelle was going to be closed curtains for Everett, but he was able to play that really well, was able to pivot around and make sure that he had a way to win that.
Yeah, and the cool thing about Murkrow, right, is it is actually a Pokemon you could just like preserve, right? Like, we thought it was actually a little rough for it because it was taunted, right? But he just had to switch it back in, and he realized that Iron Hands was a necessary sacrifice. You know, so I mean, that was a good play, surviving. Unlike Talonflame, where it could only really priority Tailwind when it's
Nerf Gale Wings. Yeah. Oh man, Gale Wings. Man. At least they recognize that, hey, having Gale Wings like that all the time is a little bit rough. And so, what I actually really appreciate is that the Murkrow switch out, I almost feels like it was I think at some point you feel forced to switch on the Murkrow, right? And so the fact that, like, there was no punishment for the Iron Hands coming in is also just a really big deal here. Like, if Aaron was able to do that, then the Iron Hands wouldn't have been there to flinch the Gyarados. It wouldn't have been able to fake it out. And I think that just sort of changes everything for Everett.
Oh yeah, and that was really good, right? I mean, he was kind of it was one of those things where, I mean, I'm sure he was more focused on the Gothitelle right there, right? Because, I mean, it was trapping him in and whatnot. So I guess he thought, like, oh yeah, I mean, even if the hand switches in here, I mean, the Gothitelle's more important, right? But that just brings Great Tusk in for free, right? And then you could get off fake out stuff, you know.
Yeah, and actually, if looking at the way that Everett sort of walked in, it seems like he's going a very aggressive route. I think I saw him lock into the Murkrow and the Golden Go, and that just feels like saying, hey, we slowed things down, now it's just to hit that gas pedal and go all the way, right?
Oh yeah, and most of this team, I mean, besides maybe like Iron Hands, right? Not besides Iron Hands and maybe Gyarados, right? Not a lot of it likes taking Make It Rain. I mean, Chi-Yu, kind of. I mean, depending on how bulky it is, right? But I mean, not a lot of these things appreciate the Make It Rain, especially from a Specs Golden Go.
Right, and like the wild part too is that you can just like negate the whole special attack drop because you have like that old, like that the first time we ever really had Scarlet Violet, right? You have that pairing of Murkrow with Haze into that Golden Go, and you have that access. You have access to that all over again. And even if, like, on top of that, if you really wanted to go super aggressive, you could just go for the Terra Steel turn 1, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like that takes us back to January, everybody, to when we first had Scarlet Violet.
Full circle.
Yeah, we've come full circle from a San Diego in too. That's kind of wild, right? Chiyu and Amoonguss though going to be the lead of choice here for Aaron. A little bit of a switch, as Everett says. All right, it's time to go hyper aggressive essentially.
All right, let's
here.
click some buttons. That's what he's saying now. I mean,
with a special defense drop too. Oof. Yeah, and
hovering that tailwind. He could also go for a quash play if he really wants like Chiyu to go last or something. So that could also be a thing.
Yeah, the question is what survives and what doesn't here, right? Because Chiyu has a lot of different moves that can be just super effective against a Gholdengo, and it's kind of just how aggressive do you want, and do you preserve your Terra for now or for later?
Yeah, and I mean, even if the Gholdengo goes down here, right? I mean, he still gets the tailwind up. He still gets enormous chip on both of them, right? Because it is specs make it rain at the end of the day.
Yeah, at that point, can you even call it chip damage if you're just doing that much damage to everybody? Chips are just small little instances of damage in this voice, and I don't think that's what Gholdengo can do. As Tailwind is being set up here, giving the speed advantage here to Everett. He went slow, now he's going fast. As Make It Rain, no Terastallization, is almost able to pick up the knockout on that Amoonguss, and does take a special attack drop for its troubles, as Heat Wave now in return from that Chiyu is able to pick up the knockout here on that Gholdengo. And is going to get knocked out, unfortunately, here, but Mirko's still able to hold on with that Rage Fighter. I mean, now you can just click Earthquake and just say, hey, okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, you might just be able to clean up the entire tournament just from the one turn, right? I mean, he just Terra grounds and just keeps going, because, I mean, this Chiyu is a Specs Chiyu, and I believe Amoonguss does not have Protector.
Oh, what? Okay, how interesting. I mean, you really could have just said, all right, we trade one spread move for another spread move, and we just keep the train rolling, but we're actually going to switch out from the Great Tusk. Did he, oh no, did he accidentally click that and then meant to click something else? Because I did see a little bit of a shake there, but we are going to have the Iron Hands come into play here, which I don't know if that was supposed to happen there, but well, Gyarados is going to come in, so at least, hey, if you clicked it in the Earthquake, you didn't have to worry about like missing one of the Pokemon here. But you are going to have a Preferred from that Gyarados, going into that Gyarados that actually still does a lot of damage, even with Intimidate from a Murkrow. And Chiyu going to go for another Heat Wave, is going to connect with both Pokemon, does a lot of damage on that Iron Hands. Murkrow is going to go on this turn, but at least it was able to set up the Tailwind.
Yeah, and believe it or not, I mean, this Great Tusk could reset its moves now, so I mean, it could go for like Headlong Rush and stuff, and still go pretty fast here, right? And actually, it might actually be a good idea that the Iron Hands did switch in, right? Because it pressures this Gyarados now, which is actually an interesting thing, right? Even if we saw how much it did even when it Terra Fairied. So, I mean, it's still a lot of pressure.
Yeah, the one thing is, like, the Great Tusk never actually moved. It switched out for the Iron Hands on this turn, so we never, like, really got to see it move at all. But like you said, both the Great Tusk and the Iron Hands have different pressuring points onto the two other Pokemon on Aaron's side. We saw the Amoonguss switch out, so we still don't really know what that last Pokemon is. Probably the Fluttermane, in all honesty here. But if you can at least get as much damage as you can without having to take that much damage in return on your side of the field, you still have access to your Terastallization. But Gyarados is like, hey, I need the Intimidates for later on, so we're going to switch out here. It is going to be that Amoonguss did have the Regenerator ability, so it is back up to almost half.
Oh, what an ability that is.
Yeah, and Chiyu goes down on this turn, is going to have to be taken down by a Headlong Rush, is going to knock down that defense and special defense. So Chiyu says, all right, well, I'm out. Goodbye. Sorry, everyone, I did my best, but it's prime time for that Gyarados to come back in here. Wild Charge is going to connect into that. Amoonguss does very little damage.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know. I think the Rocky Helmet did more damage on top of that recoil damage than the Amoonguss took. It hurt itself more in the process.
Yeah, because I mean, it took the recoil from Wild Charge and the recoil from Rocky Helmet, and Amoonguss just took like a little bit of damage. Rocky Helmet really paying off here, right? I mean, this is a very interesting situation. I believe. Oh no, Iron Hands can go for Fake Out and cannot go for Fake Out anymore. So I think there's one more turn of Tailwind left, if I remember.
Yeah, and actually this is a really tough spot now, because you probably have to Terastallize here, and like, if you protect, then you waste that last turn with Tailwind, right? Or like, I mean, you burn that last turn of Tailwind, and the Iron Hands is really gonna have to find a Pokemon to hit into. If you can get rid of that Fluttermane, you might actually be in a pretty decent spot, but it is actually going instead of to that spot. So no switch up, we are going to get a Terastallization here. It's going to be that actually Iron Hands into that Fire Terastallization. No boosted ground type. strategization here for that Great Tusk. It is actually going to be instead Iron Hands. And Fluttering going for the Protect on this turn instead. Doesn't want to take any damage whatsoever. As the Great Tusk goes into the Headlong Rush into that spot, is still only going to be at -1 defense and special defense because it did not connect on this turn. And Amoonguss is going to have to take a wild charge from this Iron Hands, is unable to get knocked out. Well, that was a critical hit. Again, it's still taking so much damage from the recoil and the Rocky Helmet. And Amoonguss goes for the Sport. It's going to put that Great Tusk to sleep. And this is the turn that Tailwind expires, and now it's just Fluttermane's game to win at this point.
No, this is really hard for Everett at this point. So I think he's gonna. I believe he just clicked clicked FF there.
Yeah, I wonder if because the hard part is like the Goldengo and the Murkrow sort of lead was like really fun to watch, but the problem with that is that you weren't able to pick up a knockout, and then your Goldengo just gets sort of knocked out, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, honestly, like considering this is a Specs Goldengo, right? I mean, if you do have the will to like maybe, I mean, this is more hindsight, right? But I mean, if you had the more will to like read that, kind of like maybe like Shadow Ball or something, right? But like, I mean, Shadow Ball wouldn't do much into Chiyu or Amoonguss, so I guess it was really the only option. Maybe he might go for like a slower pace match here, but I mean, we'll see, because I mean, it didn't seem like the Goldengo did enough, right?
Yeah, it feels like Everett said, we're gonna go really fast, and then realized, okay, maybe not that fast, because it didn't really do much for him. The Goldengo, I think, offers a little bit of nice pressure early on, but I think it offers that only when it's really picking up knockouts. And the lead that Aaron had against that Murkrow Goldengo was very much like, oh, okay, cool. What's gonna happen now is that you get no knockouts, and I'm gonna knock out your Goldengo, and that's a huge damage dealer for you.
Oh, and it looks like he's trying to lead with the Great Tusk Murkrow, and actually he did switch into that. I believe he did like double switch into that. Was that game 1?
Game 1, yeah.
It was game 2. Game 1, yeah. So I mean, I mean, instead of doing that, he's decided I'm just gonna lead with this.
We're gonna start with this instead of like switching into it and getting hurt by it instead. It's kind of interesting because this is definitely one of those like I think matches where your leads really just. Sometimes, like, you know, the leads really just do determine game, but I think more so than ever in this specific matchup against Aaron's team, Everett really has to get that lead right, because if not, he gets punished so heavily for it.
Yeah, and again, like, his team really is relying on the turn 1, whether it's Trick Room or Tailwind, right? So, I mean, it's a little rough on his end, but I mean, he's made it work so far, right? So, I mean, let's see how he does here. Intimidate comes out now.
Yeah, that Gyarados and Amoonguss combination was actually the lead for game 1, so it is going to get the Intimidate down onto both of these Pokemon again. So it is going to be really interesting because the Murkrow might want to set up Tailwind. Actually is going to try to go for, go for the attack into the Amoonguss. There's just a lot going on here, and I think if whatever it is probably trying to figure out is if there's a hard read that Gyarados switches out here.
Or, I mean, it does do a lot of damage to the Amoonguss. I don't think it quite knocks out because of the -1. But, I mean...
a double down into it would.
Yeah, a double down into it would. And he does call it. Let's see what this Amoonguss goes for. I mean, Amoonguss is the slowest Pokemon on the field that does not have Protect.
No, if he had been able to, like, understand that maybe the Gyarados was switching out there, right, he definitely would have been able to, like, knock out this Chew. But Headlong Rush is very, like, ooh, that damage is kind of rough there. It is at -1 from that... from that Gyarados' Intimidate, but that Rocky Helmet also, and top of the HP loss from Life Orb, but Brave Bird followed up here by that Murkrow, not quite enough to pick up the knockout, which means this Chew gets in for so free, and there's a Spore coming out right now.
Oh, and he does click it into the Great Tusk, so this is a little rough for Everett here, but, I mean, he maybe can be able to potentially just Brave Bird again and get the knockout into Amoonguss, but I mean, at what cost, right? Because I mean, he could either Tailwind Brave Bird here, but it's a little costly, right? Because Great Tusk is most likely going down, or they just double up into the Murkrow.
I also don't think that Amoonguss is going to stay on the field for very long at all. I think that Amoonguss is going to say, hey, I did my job, I put something to sleep, I'm getting out of here while I still can get back some of that health and come back when I'm needed.
Oh yeah, and that makes it even more annoying for Everett later on, right, too? So I mean, that's also a really good option there.
Especially because if you're able to get that Gyarados in, like, the way that switch outs work, right, is like based on your speed tier. So if you switch out the Amoonguss now, like after like that, then like you can still get intimidated by the Gyarados is the rough part here.
Yeah.
So Iron Hands is going to come out onto the field in place of that Murkrow. Murkrow not able to set up any sort of Tailwind is not, but no switch out for the Great Tusk is staying fast asleep. No switch out either for that Amoonguss. Chiyu going for the Heat Wave instead is going to be able to pick up the knockout here on that Great Tusk. That Great Tusk, which was such a good damage dealer here for Everett, is going to go down with barely able to do anything. And the Spore, though, is going to make sure it does not connect with Everett's Iron Hands thanks to that safety goggles.
That was actually a pretty good call there, right? I mean, you did take the damage there, but I mean, don't get anything put to sleep. I guess Murkrow went to sleep. It might have been a little rough, right? So... And he does actually have open up with this fake out pressure. He could fake out the Chi-Yu and maybe go for the Amoonguss here.
Yeah, we are going to see Terastallize lock in for the moment, but I think this is a really rough spot for Everett, right? The Amoonguss sure is still in the is in the red, but it's not knocked out. It's still putting in like some pressure on here. You could switch it out, get the regenerator stuff. The Chi-Yu is just sitting here pretty, not having taken any damage at all, was able to pick up a knockout. It's still putting in a lot of pressure because of that Heat Wave. The Iron Hands took a lot of damage from that Heat Wave, so if you don't take it out this turn, you are just going to lose that Iron Hands and basically two of your heavy attackers at that point. Because we see the Golden go in the back, but it needs some help.
Yeah, and I mean that help would be Tailwind here, right? But I mean, when he's gonna get it up, we don't really know. I mean, just switching that, yes, the Intimidate down. This is a little rough here, but I mean,
yeah, the Gyarados is a really fantastic spot. He was able to get that Intimidate down. I think if you're Everett and you were expecting maybe a switch out for them, just like a Wild Charge into that spot would have been just amazing in that moment, right? Instead we are going to get a Terastallized Chi-Yu. If you Wild Charge that spot, that would also be really great. But this Chi-Yu says, hey, I'm going to actually be a fish and a water type. And it's kind of funny because it's passing on its part of its fire typing onto that Iron Hands, who is going to Terastallize into a fire Iron Hands too. And honestly, this Iron Hands has to put in a lot of work to be able to keep up with like the way that Aaron's just been positioning himself right now. As Murkrow goes for the tail with this, going to try to give himself the speed advantage here in the moment. As Chi goes for the Heat Wave, is not going to hit the Murkrow, is going to hit the Iron Hands, but not going to do as much damage thanks to the fact that it has that Terastallization.
Oh, that's huge.
The Wild Charge going into the Chi spot is going to take recoil damage there, and that yeah, that Chi surviving is kind of wild because it's not Sash.
Yes,
it's choice specs. It is not a Sash Chi. So this Chi was like, I have an invisible focus Sash. Really sorry about that, everybody.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a creature survive, right? I mean, you could, I mean, there's still Tailwind up, right? But I mean, at the same time, it's like it's rough. Even if this Goldengo comes in, it's still really rough.
Yeah, especially because I mean, you do have the option to quash if you wanted
that
to.
Is an option.
The problem is that the Chi just has to click Heat Wave, and then like the Iron Hands basically just goes down. But Chi says, yeah, we're not gonna give you that option here. We are going to leave. And Amoonguss comes back, and hey, Amoonguss was in the red. Not anymore. That is so much HP it gets back from your generator. Iron Hands is also gonna leave the field, so the two Terastallized Pokemon are gonna say goodbye to the field for right now as Goldengo comes back out, or it actually comes out for the first time in this game. Murkrow going for a Brave Bird into what was a Chi spot. Still misses the knockout onto that. Amoonguss is also going to take damage with the recoil and from the Rocky Helmet. Gyarados is able to go for the taunt on this turn. Not that Murkrow really cared about it in this moment. Still kind of...
and one turn left of Tailwind looks like.
Yeah, so that's really good for that Gyarados was able to get the taunt in that moment. Says, hey, you know that speed control that you really like? Yeah, we're just not going to let you have that after this turn. And actually, really, this Murkrow can only hit into... it can only really hit into Brave Bird. And now you're actually also still in a weird spot where you could go after the Gyarados with a Thunderbolt, or you could go for the spread with Make It Rain. But this Murkrow just... if it can pick up the knockout on an Amoonguss and you can get the knockout with like the Thunderbolt into Gyarados, you can still really be in it.
Yeah, and crucially, right, I mean, there's an Iron Hands in the back, right? So, I mean, after he goes for this Make It Rain, right, he can always just reset his Choice Lock.
Yeah, and so we have the Flutter Mane coming out onto the field here. Is like, all right, it is my turn to shine. I'm at full health. I get that booster engine. Gets an extra on the speed here as well. Murkrow going for the Brave Bird is at least able to pick up this Amoonguss' knockout. Yeah, finally. It's been in the red twice. And again, Murkrow takes so much more damage from that Brave Bird, I think. So... honestly, it's still kind of in a rough spot. It gets hit by the Rocky Helmet, but hit by the recoil. Goldengo goes for the Thunderbolt here. If that had been a Make It Rain, that would have been a wild turn for it too. But honestly, right, like between I think what the Gyarados and the Fluttermane here, Everett is still in a really good spot because there is no Tailwind anymore.
Yeah, and since he's taunted, it's a little rough too, right? So I mean, what he can do eventually, right, is maybe switch into Iron Hand, sack it, and then he can get the Tailwind back because he ends up getting the taunt removed, right? So I mean, that could be something possible, but that does leave this Golden Go kind of sitting there, just clicking bolt and not very fast, you know?
Yeah, and
Oh, he still
she
has it
Tailwind.
up.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Okay, never mind. We're really that was a rough time for us to count it. It's this is one of those moments where I think like you almost wish that you would have been able to click into the Mega Raid because you're not doing that much into the Thunderbolt in there, and I wonder if you're okay with sacrificing both of these Pokemon because at the end of the day, you can get at least one knockout here. I mean, sure. I wonder if you almost go for the Thunderbolt into the Fluttermane here and just Brave Bird into the Chief again, because at least you get the knockout on one of them. But then your Iron Hands is going to get intimidated regardless.
Yeah, and this is very interesting because I mean he is preserving the Murkrow like he did in game 1, I believe it was, right? So I mean it's gonna be very interesting, right? If the Goldengo somehow survives this turn,
okay,
this is actually might be really good.
Well, I think the Fluttermane has Shadow Ball, so it
depends on how bulky the Goldengo is.
Yeah, so Goldengo and Iron Hands are gonna get an Intimidate down onto them. Goldengo just like, okay, that's fine, it doesn't matter. But actually, the Shadow Ball goes into the Iron Hands instead, so Murkrow's gonna be able to come back in later on here. I still think it's kind of a rough position. I mean, Tailwind did expire, right? And so Tailwind expires this turn. Thunderbolt's gonna go into that Gyarados. Is gonna be able to pick up the knockout here. Murkrow comes back in. You're gonna set up Tailwind now, right? But I think you just go out. You can go after the Chew because you don't have to worry about a protect. Murkrow comes in. You Tailwind here. You still go down to a Shadow Ball though.
And actually, a very interesting thing, right? I mean, yeah, it does go down to the Shadow Ball here, but
you got a Shadow. You got on a Shadow Ball. You go down to Dark Pulse, right? Yeah. Either way, I think you're kind of in a rough spot. So it was close. I mean, yeah, maybe. Like I think if somehow you survive a Shadow Ball here, because the speed was heightened for the Fluttermane, right? Not special attack.
Yeah, and we don't know how bulky this Goldengo is either.
If you're doing that much damage to stuff, maybe not super bulky.
Maybe not.
Because you're going for all-out attack essentially here at that moment, right? I mean, the Chew is gonna go down. Like you get the Tailwind up, sure, you get the speed advantage for that Goldengo against the Chew. But if that Fluttermane goes first, if it knocks out here, you're still kind of in trouble no matter what.
Ooh, 3 HP.
Still.
Yeah,
actually,
still maybe not.
Can you quash a Fluttermane?
Yes, you can, because it is not immune to bangs there.
So if you can quash the Fluttermane,
possibly.
But okay. So then at that point, right, you're really hoping for either a critical hit on the Thunderbolt or a paralyze, and a paralyze coming into play immediately.
Fluttermane does have a chunk left, so it is a Specs Thunderbolt.
I think it's just gonna come down to like sort of damages, and you got to go for it. I think that's all you can really do. Is you gotta hope for the quash. You gotta hope that Thunderbolt is able to. Oh gosh, yeah. You just gotta I think that's all you can do.
All right, let's see. This is the moment of truth.
Yeah, if you can either get a critical hit here, you get a paralyze and it kicks in immediately, then you might be able to do this. So the Specs Thunderbolt with 3 HP left, not quite enough as Dazzling Gleam.
Picks it up with the Gleam.
Is going to be able to pick up the knockout here. I mean, that was close. The fact that Shadow Ball was able to like not knock out that Goldengo, that end game, if like if you'd been able to get a paralyze and then the crit, like woof, that would have been insane. But that was a really fun sort of end game, and like definitely a fun finals for us to watch.
I love this finals show so
congratulations,
much.
Aaron. Congrats.
Good job, Aaron. Yeah, good job, Aaron. I guess first PC win this year. So, I mean, congratulations to him. And Everett, I mean, he's been putting in the work. He's been putting in the work, so I'm really proud of him.
Proud friend dad moment.
I know, for sure. So, I mean, I'm glad he got this far. I'm sure all of his friends, everyone who came out today with him.
And everyone watching at home. So, again, from the Psycho Turtle team and from the POW Gaming team, we thank you guys for watching with us. Really appreciate it. And again, thank you again to Troy, who's been fantastic on the stream all day. Thank you. We appreciate you so much. Miguel, Jen, and Taryn for being our VGC side for here. we really, really appreciate all the work that they do. Thank your TO, thank your judges, because without them, we have no play
I know
Pokemon.
these people are the best. They're so good. They're so good.
Yeah,
Really friendly.
Yeah,
also.
so we will see you all in July for July